I'm Nicola Talent, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. I don't know where to start with this case, Brad, because it is, as you say, it's like a kind of a work of fiction of some sort. But so you tell me where it starts, and we can delve into the various segues on it as we go along.
Okay, well, it's basically like Game of Thrones set in the South. The Murdaugh family were prominent attorneys in an area of South Carolina called the Low Country, and it was like five sort of counties, and they basically have held sway there since 2010, or I'm sorry, 1910. And there's a position there. We have the crown prosecutors here in the U.S. It's district attorneys, but they call it the solicitor, the county solicitor. And so they controlled like a lot of your crime. They were the prosecutors and everything, but they also had their own private law firm, which that end of the state ended up becoming, it became known as Murdaugh country. It's, the Low Country. It's on the Atlantic Ocean. It's on the border with Georgia. It's quite a poor area. And one of the reasons it is that the family law firm became specialists in personal injuries sort of court cases, which I know if you've ever sat up with a drink late at night in your hotel room in America, you'll see about 100 ads for we'll get you big money sort of thing. But they were the kings of that, and there was a quirk in South Carolina law that plaintiffs could form shop, as it were, and so they would go down there. So you've got the Murdaugh family essentially in charge of, all sort of court matters and the other thing. But the result is that so many out-of-state corporations and whatnot were sued. Think, the little old lady who drinks the cup of coffee at McDonald's that's too hot. So many major companies were sued down there that when it came time to open shop or move their businesses there, as it were, they'd say no thanks. So essentially there's nothing there. There's no, very few fast food places. There's, no big companies and whatnot. And the Murdaugh family became rich over that. And
I was going to say, Brad, they must have become stinking rich, because you're talking about generations of them firstly coming down as professional lawyers and going back to the great-great-grandfather of Alex Murdaugh. That money was coming down the line. So the current, up until what happened, but the current sort of head of that family, Alex Murdaugh, you're probably talking a multimillionaire, yeah?
Oh yeah, he would have been extremely wealthy and helped on by allegedly burning clients for a gazillion dollars, which this was the house of cards that he'd built up, which leads you to June 7th, 2021. This was all, he was hopelessly addicted to oxycodone, or hillbilly heroin, as it were. And but he had all sorts of financial improprieties in regard to the family firm, of which he was a partner, and a lot of these were sort of insurance scams that he would work out with other lawyers.
But how much can an OxyContin habit cost you? Because he already would have had presumably lots of inheritance money. He has, a massive big law firm. He's making loads of money legitimately anyway. Now, because of what happened, we know that he was swindling people along the way. But Was there something else going on there that he had financial difficulties?
Well, I mean, part of it was also a deep fear. His son, one of the two that had been murdered, was a wild child, and you know, don't wish him dead, but an arrogant rich kid sort of thing, and a bit of a hellraiser. And in 2019, uh, with booze bought by his father and his brother, and condoned by his mother Maggie, he got in the boat with some of his friends. He was blistered, and he slammed the boat into a concrete pillar, and there was injuries. And one of the women on board, a woman named Mallory Beach, she was 19. She disappeared, and they found her body a week later. And so what happens at the hospital after that tragic evening is that Alex Murdaugh and his father, Randolph Murdaugh III, they show up there, and the cops are letting them essentially go room to room, saying, "Don't say anything," fixing them up with their preferred lawyers, all to protect Paul. Now, the Beach family weren't about to let this go lying down, and they squeezed hard. And what happens is that Paul, who was charged with manslaughter, and this trial was coming up. But in the meantime, I mean, it's not a great look for a lawyer, even if it is your kid, going around the hospital following a tragic accident, trying to dot your T's or dot your I's and cross your T's. So they were trying to put the squeeze on these people, and everybody knew how powerful they were. And so this was going to come out. But what this was going to reveal is all the insurance scams and different other things. And there'd been other deaths that the family, was on at, mysterious deaths that the family was, if not at the center of, then certainly on the periphery.
So were they going around the hospital trying to get to Mallory Beach's family and maybe offer them a settlement before they would sue, or were they going around trying to get at other potential witnesses and trying to sign them up for their services?
They were trying to get other potential witnesses to basically, they were throwing up a Praetorian guard, as it were, around son Paul, and that was to deflect. He wasn't driving, yada yada yada, all that sort of thing. And that was the game plan, was to protect Paul, but also in the back of Alex's head, protect Alex and protect the family and the firm. And because, I mean, so many matters of this nature had gone their way over the decades, that this is how they had operated. It was a real good old boy, back slapping, mint julep, seersucker suit kind of world that has largely disappeared even from the South. But still, you have this corner of South Carolina controlled by this one family.
So the Beach family were obviously devastated by the death of Mallory, only 19. They were adamant they were going to get justice in more ways than one. They managed to get themselves a separate team of lawyers who weren't the Murdaughs, and they started a civil case which was putting pressure to get discovery of documents relating to the Murdaugh family finances. Paul was charged with 3 felony counts, and clearly in the background his father is beginning to panic because of other things that have happened in the past, including a year prior to this boating accident. A housekeeper called Gloria Satterfield, who was 57, she'd been a nanny to the family, and she had fallen on the stairs of the family's hunting property. I think what subsequently emerged was that Alex Murdaugh received an amount of money in a claim, but it never made its way to her family. He pocketed
No, that's quite right. What he did was, he got, when she died now, and that's, I mean, there was like, the death certificate was dodgy. I think the death certificate was marked natural causes, and there was no coroner's report. There was, police weren't called. There was nothing like that at all. So, how she died, remains. The fall did kill her. How she fell down the stairs remains in question. But he had encouraged her sons to sue him with I think he used the idea that his insurance company would pay them off handsomely. And he said, use this lawyer who was his college roommate. And so, the insurance company settled, and the money went to a bank called the Palmetto Bank, which was, I'd mentioned earlier, was controlled by friends of the Murdaughs. The money went to Murdaugh and the other lawyer. It didn't go to Miss Satterfield's two sons. And so now you've got probably, I guess, about a dozen people, that are suing, that have been done wrong. And the theft is, I think, in the neighborhood of about $10 million US, like, throughout. I mean, I think it was $5 million alone for that. So
things are beginning to unravel, really, for him. And obviously, all of that will bring with it a high degree of stress and anxiety for anybody. But in June 2021, something extraordinary happens, and we'll maybe be able to hear some of the 911 call.
911, where's your emergency?
This is Alex Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately. My wife and child got badly.
Okay, you said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison?
Sir?
You said 4147 Moselle Road in Allison?
Yes, sir. 4147 Moselle Road.
Stay on the line with me, okay? Yes, sir. Stay on the line with me, okay? Okay.
Colin County Communications.
Collison, I have an Alex Murdaugh on the line, caller from 4147 Moselle Road. He's advising that his wife and child was shot.
Okay, and sir, give me the address again.
It's 4147 Moselle Road. I've been up to it now. It's bad.
Okay. Okay, and are they breathing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and you said it's your wife and your son?
My wife and my son.
Are they in a vehicle?
No, ma'am. They're on the ground out at my kennels.
So, Brad, what had happened here on June 7th of 2021?
Well, as what we know is that Alex Murdaugh's father, Randolph Murdaugh III, was in hospital dying, and he wanted his wife Maggie, who he was estranged from at that time over his woes, sort of thing. She was living at their beach house. And so the idea was that he would go with Maggie and son Paul to see his father. Now that's what he lured her, allegedly, to their hunting lodge, beach house hunting lodge. You get there when you're rich or crooked. So he gets her to come there. She told her sister that something was fishy. He didn't sound right. But she went reluctantly to the house. Well, his alibi is that he's visiting, his mother, but, cell phone towers and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And video and things put him at the scene of the crime. And, to the point of how many steps his wife had taken before, she was shot to death. They were both shot numerous times.
And this hunting lodge is because, like, you'll have to explain that a little bit to us, but it's in a really rural part of the countryside, and there wouldn't be too much surrounding it or anybody who'd see or hear anything.
No, there would be nothing. It would be out in the country, and there wouldn't be many people around at all. I mean, the nearest neighbor, I can't remember how many acres it was. It was like 1,200 acres or something like that. So remote and extremely private. So nobody's, and in that part of the country, in the southern United States, hearing a gun going off really isn't a terribly unusual occurrence.
And of course, it's the prosecution case at the moment. Currently, the trial is going on, which is really captivating America. But it's the prosecution case that he killed his wife Maggie and his son Paul, then took off in the car and started phoning, well, certainly her number, very quickly after it. Claimed he was visiting his mother to give himself an alibi, and returned to find the bodies. And that's where we hear that 911 call, where he doesn't sound too panicked.
No, he doesn't sound too panicked at all. I think I'm certain. I mean, he was, the cops have later said that, although it took them, a year to arrest him for the murders, I mean, he was suspect number one, like right out of the gate. Like there was, never any doubt in the police's mind that he was somehow involved. And, if you're from around that corner of the country, what he's up to,
And there was never any other persons of interest in the case. There was no other suspicious activity seen near this hunting lodge. No cars seen speeding away, and no other motives really for this lady Maggie Murdaugh and her son Paul to be killed. So obviously, if he was in a bad place before they died, he's in a worse place, stress, anxiety wise, afterwards. Not only are the cops now digging into this, but they're also digging back into the death of a teenager back in 2015 near his home, and obviously other frauds, etc., that happened. So, like, he's eventually brought to court, right? And he's charged in relation to the murder of his wife and his son, and the trial has got going there. But before this, there's another little chapter, because I read somewhere, I presume it was the New York Times, because I was reading a lot of the stuff in that the killing of his wife and son, that the prosecution case is that the motive for that was to kind of garner sympathy and to give himself breathing space. And his sort of staged suicide attempt some months later, similar motive there.
Well, yeah, exactly. Theoretically, it was, he got a crony and met him on a roadway, and then, they started screwing around with the gun. The gun went off, and it only grazed him, and but he had said he was despondent and whatnot, and he thought, and which is pretty stupid for a lawyer, that he didn't, the insurance policy, he was hoping, or at least this is one of the aspects, that his $10 million fortune, or what was left of it or whatever, would go to his son Buster, who was the surviving member of the family. And but his insurance policy had basically, suicide, no dough. I mean, it's not good.
So this is very complex. He's claiming, or he would be claiming, that he wanted to end his life, that all this mess he'd left there, and he couldn't face the trial for the murder of his wife and his son, but he yet wanted to provide for this other son who was still there. And He wanted to kill himself.
Selfless, just selfless.
Totally selfless. So he wanted to do that, but he couldn't actually do it himself. So he had to bring this guy along to kill him. So it was another murder?
Well, yeah, that would have added up to another one. And the thing is this guy.
What about the poor guy he brought along? Like, I mean, had he explained this bit to him that he was?
Well, his Mr. Smith, I believe, he's got his name here, Curtis Edward Smith. Yeah, and so. On September 3rd, 2021, they decide that, they're going to do this, or at least Alex Murdaugh, hints that, so they go through this. Now, Curtis Smith is also Alex Murdaugh's, supplies him with pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And the pair of them have been in a number of narcotics related deals. And it's just
crazy.
Like everything is like, I mean, you look at him and you just go down a wormhole on virtually everything in this case. I mean, there's a connection. There's a judge's cousin or something like that.
But Curtis was going to do a runner and not wait to call the police. So the plan was that he was to kill Murdaugh and hang around and tell the police that he'd killed him, so they wouldn't consider that it was.
No, it was supposed to be left as a suicide, but of course things went awry, and I guess some minds were changed, and the police eventually did come, and Smith was arrested, and it all. I mean, ultimately, Alex Murdaugh again got charged with, what he was, orchestrating was an insurance fraud.
So that one sounds as if there would have been a lot of OxyContin or whatever the hell they were taking involved in that, because I just can't get my head around that one, what they were trying to do. But anyway, so look, the trial has started and extraordinary evidence already. He is sitting there, by the looks of it, in floods of tears every day and devastated, and he's obviously pleading not guilty.
Yeah, he's pleaded not guilty. I mean, the one thing that kind of struck me, Nicola, is, when you get into some of the states in the South, is that, this case, even now, even as he's on trial, this case has all the ingredients for a death penalty case, right? Pre-planned. There's another crime or crimes being covered up or committed, tied in with it. But the prosecution has decided not to seek the death penalty. And yes, he cries and whatnot every day, but I think probably he's quite likely crying for himself. It's at this stage, he hasn't been convicted or anything, but it doesn't look really good for Alex at this juncture. And I think, his defense team and now they're mulling putting him on the stand. And, which is, sort of, as we say in American football parlance, a Hail Mary down the field in hopes of a miracle. And I just don't see it coming. It's like there's just been stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of evidence against him.
And is it likely to last the case for much longer? Or is it moving into defense if they're already talking about putting him on the stand?
Yeah, I think the prosecution should wrap up this week or maybe mid next week. I mean, what they've produced has been like so incredibly damning, Nicola. It's just, I mean, you want to get the rope and
what about the son, Buster? And is he supporting his father? He's lost his mother. He's lost his brother. Presumably the family law firm is discredited completely, if not taken out of their hands. I mean, he's not going to inherit what his great-great-great-great-great-grandfather started off.
I guess you could say he's supporting his father, but, I mean, there's, there's more frauds in the offing as this all unravels, because Alex Murdaugh has, tried to quickly move money around, almost like a shell game, so that Buster would be all right. But I mean, what are you going to do with a name like Buster, right?
Is that an actual name, by the way? I did want to ask that question. I didn't know whether that would sound silly.
It is. It was one of I think it was the great grandfather's middle name, and yeah, this is his name, Buster.
It just sounds like a Labrador dog.
Yeah, no, I know, right?
Well, look, it's an extraordinary story, Brad, and there's many extraordinary stories and cases that come out of the States, but I think this is up there. It really is. We'll come back to it when it wraps up and we see a verdict.